Hi, if you want to know how to become a self-directed learner outside the university system, stay with me. Hi and welcome to the Uncon School at howtobecomeaprofessor.com, the web show to learn from unconventional professors and experts. In today's episode, you will learn how you can learn anything on your own outside the formal education system. For this episode, I've invited David Mansary, founder of the Big Self-Education Project and creator of the hugely popular Language is Culture podcast. David was born in Sierra Leone, grew up in London, and currently lives in Barcelona in Spain. He describes himself as a philomath, that's a Greek word meaning lover of learning. David is convinced that the life full of learning is life well fulfilled, so he's dedicating his life to continuously learning about himself, the world, and trying to inspire others to do the same. He was an average student in school, but when he left, he became extremely interested in how humans learn when he discovered he can teach himself faster and better than they could ever teach him in school. That realization made him fall in love with self-directed learning, and that's the main topic of today's episode. He believes in self-directed learning so much that he decided to drop out of university to pursue the Big Self-Education Project. To give you an idea of the sort of things he does, currently, he is a student of Spanish, Japanese, and Italian. He's teaching himself how to program and design websites. He takes photos, he makes videos, and he even writes music. Learning how to learn is the best thing he has ever done, and he wants to share everything he has learned, everything he is learning, and everything he's going to learn. All right, David, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's exciting to have conversations about self-education and how we can improve our lives through it. I think it's wonderful, so I'm excited about this.
Awesome. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, how come that you decided to drop out from university and start becoming an independent learner? Why do you think you can learn better, more effectively by yourself than in school, for instance?
Well, I think part of it is my personality. You know, I will never say that dropping out of university is something that everyone should do. I'm not a believer in extremes, even in, prescribing extreme solutions to people, but I'm a bit of an extreme person myself, but I know that not everyone is like me. But I decided to drop out of university because it just wasn't something that was working for me. You know, I went to university a few times and I didn't continue with my courses because I didn't feel as though I was getting enough and it wasn't as practical as I would have liked the courses to be. And I felt that it was a lot of it based on theory, and I just wasn't happy with the format. And also having to learn things that I, in my opinion, were not very important. And I think that when we learn things, it's the motivation is the most important factor. And university just didn't motivate me, not in the slightest. And so when I took some time off of university, there was a period when I took some time off and I started teaching myself a bunch of different things, and I was following my curiosity. And then I realized that this method or this approach works a lot better for me as an individual because I don't feel as though I need to have someone looking over my shoulder or to go to an institution to feel validated in any sense. For me, the goal is the constant improvement and the knowledge that I'm getting. The certificates don't mean anything for me because, for me personally, because I always say that I'm a terrible employee. You know, I have to work for myself. I'm not going to go and work for a company or anything like that. So this works for me for many, many reasons, and those are some of them.
Okay, got it. I mean, I really like to stress the difference between certification and qualification, right? So certification is a piece of paper that tells you, or should tell the outside world that you are qualified, but it doesn't necessarily tells anything about your qualification, right? And on the other hand, qualification is really the actual abilities and the actual knowledge that you have acquired by yourself or in a schooling institution as well.
Well,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, and one thing I'll add is that there are lots of people that I know that go to universities and have studied for many, many years, but I'm not criticizing, but I also know people who have not gone that path, and I would call them more experts in the field, or they have more practical knowledge, more application, more experience, and I think that the experience is the most important factor with anything that we're doing.
Okay. I mean, you know yourself well, obviously, and you said that you're not a good employee and you really want to be an entrepreneur. You want to do your own thing, right? But what kind of advice would you give people who do not share the same entrepreneurial spirit like you? Do you think, the formal traditional education system and going and getting a degree is the way to go if you want to work for a company?
Good question. I don't think it's the way to go. I think it's one of the ways to go. And I think that the person who is going to be able to walk down the path of self-education is going to be the person that doesn't care so much about what people think or is able to overcome the need for validation from others. Because in many ways, I'll be honest, I think that going down the self-education path is a more difficult way of doing things. It's not the easier way. And so if you're looking to have your hand held and you're wanting to have a path that has been created for you, then maybe that is the way to go. However, if there is a person who maybe doesn't want to get themselves into debt, doesn't want to invest as much time necessarily in an institution, then I would say that this way is to go. But to give more sort of concrete advice, when I talk about language learning, I say that it's a process of discovery. So discovering who you are and how you learn, and at the same time discovering the language. And so I think it's the same with sort of education in any sense. You have to discover what works for you, and at the same time the knowledge. And so I always like to say that the best thing is to experiment. The best thing is to experiment, because what works for me might not work for you. And I know that when I listen to interviews and someone doesn't give concrete advice, I think, oh, right, that doesn't help me. But that's because that's just the way it is, You have to find out what works for you. There is no one size fits all. And I like to say there's no one size fits all. There's only the size that fits you,
Okay, got it. Makes totally sense. Okay, I mean, in the introduction, I mentioned what you're currently studying or what you're trying to learn by yourself. So to repeat that, you're currently a student of Spanish, Japanese, and Italian. So 3 languages, right?
I do study these languages, but the language that I've made the most progress with at the moment is Spanish. And so Italian and Japanese are things that I've learned at a very basic level up to this point, just to make that clear.
Got it. And excuse me, you're also teaching yourself how to program and designing websites. You're taking photos, you're making videos, and you also write music. So there are basically 5 different skills that you're currently trying to develop by yourself. So the question is, I mean, we hear from human resource managers and from successful people, you have to specialize yourself, right? You have to immerse yourself into one very narrow, specific skill or area so you can build your profile and become an expert in something. And so what is your take on that? Do you think it's advisable to be a jack of all trades, but become mediocre in many different areas, or really become very, very good in one specific skill?
I get this question a lot. I receive a lot of emails with people asking me, what do you think about this, David? Because I'm someone like you who loves learning, but I'm worried that I won't get very far if I do lots and lots of different things. And this is absolutely a valid argument and a concern that people should have. However, the way that I think of it is that you don't have to be one or the other. If we go to one end of the extreme, we can look at one of my heroes, Leonardo da Vinci, someone who mastered multiple things, Very few people are going to be able to master so many things or have that kind of passion. But at the same time, on the other end of the extreme, we have those who are hyper focused on one thing and they become experts in that discipline. But I think that there is room for somewhere in the middle with people. So, for example, you mentioned HR managers. When they are looking for the right person for the job, they are looking for someone who has perhaps the credentials, the experience, and the skills to actually perform the job. All right, and I don't think that because you are really good at something, it means that you can't explore other areas. So my goal is not to put out there that we should all become jack of all trades. You know, it's more that we have the potential to push ourselves to learn more about more things. Of course, if you're going to go for a job, you're going to design your CV to appeal to whoever it is you're wanting to capture the attention of. But that doesn't have anything to do with what else you do in the rest of your time, what else you develop. And so I believe that the world is one big network. It's all connected, right? And so if you learn something about, let's say, drawing, or you know how something about art is going to help you in other areas of your life as well. And so my philosophy is that you can become very good at many different things. But if your main concern is getting a job, then you're going to want to have some sort of speciality that you're going to get paid for. So that would be my answer to that. Does that make sense?
Definitely. I mean, what is your goal in what? I mean, you are embarking so many different journeys at the moment, learning journeys. But is there one specific thing that you would like to be known for to the outside world?
Interesting. Another interesting question. So for me, I get this question as well. What is your goal, David? And for me, learning is a pleasure in itself.
Mm-hmm.
The learning doesn't have a specific goal. I'm just someone who loves learning. So somebody might then think, okay, that's great, wonderful, but in the world we need to make money, we need to live, But what I make my money from is at the moment languages, and I have a number of different projects that I'm embarking on, which also provide me with income. And so I'm interested in entrepreneurship, revolutionizing education. And so I have many different things that I'm going on. But at the same time, I think that we are known for different things to different people. There are friends of mine who don't know anything about my language fascination, and that we speak about completely different things. And so sort of like, if you think about marketing in general, is that, you have to know who you're talking to at any one time, And so I adapt my skill set and present different things to different people as I navigate through life. And so not everyone I talk to knows that David loves doing this, because it's just not relevant, It totally depends. And so my goal, to sum it up, is to develop this... I came across this term, an encyclopedic mind, you could say, where I'm someone who just wants to understand the world better. And that, I believe, is necessary for someone who wants to build things for people in an entrepreneurial sense.
Okay, awesome. Okay, let's get into the techniques and specifics and strategies. Do you follow a specific strategy, a specific framework when you start learning something entirely new?
Absolutely,
Right?
yeah.
Okay, so please share with us that strategy.
The first thing I do before I embark on something new is I find people who are so-called experts in their field and that know a lot about, they don't have to be experts, but know a lot more than I do. And then I ask them for their advice about what I should be paying attention to, what the main resources out there, and sort of to find out what the journey is going to be like. Because I like to think like this, that if we are walking down a path, we're at the start of a path, there is no way that we're going to know what is on that path, what is on the other side. All we have is our perspective at the beginning. And often you will find whenever we try to learn something, it turns out to be almost much more difficult than we thought it would be, or completely different. And so I like to sort of find that person who has gone down that path and say, hey, I'm thinking of walking down that path. Could you sort of tell me what goes on down there and what I should be paying attention to? That's the first thing. And I don't just do this with one person. I get many different perspectives, because even in one field, different people have different takes on things. And so I like to sort of cherry pick from different minds, and then I sort of combine things together to find out which would be the best approach for me and what I want to get out of it.
How do you identify those experts in the first place?
Well, number one, if they have credentials, that's one way of finding out if they have some sort of, well, if someone's gone through university or they have a degree for what they've done, then it's clear that this person knows more than you. And so I sort of look at what somebody is doing at the moment. And so let's say photography. I want to become good at photography, then I'm going to do a lot of research on who the experts are in this field, maybe look up some books, and then online is one of the internet is so fantastic for making contact with different people. So for example, in the language learning world, lots of people giving advice on language learning, how to learn languages, and I found a way to make contact with several different language learners, and then they became friends of mine, and one friend comes to mind, Luca Lampariello. Ask him, I'm always saying, Luca, what do you think of this? Luca, what do you think of that? Luca, how do you think I should do this, etc., etc. And so identifying who is an expert is something that can be a bit tricky, but if you pay attention to what somebody has done and what somebody is currently doing, you can sort of get an idea. And again, this person doesn't have to be an expert, the best, but just someone who is ahead of you to take you further. I always say that my goal is not to, my goal every day is to learn more today than I did yesterday. And so as long as I'm learning something new, then I'm making progress. And again, this question you asked is important, because as beginners, it's difficult to know who is an expert or who knows what they're talking about, right? But this becomes clear as time goes on. As you become more knowledgeable, it becomes more clear who actually knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. And so in the beginning, it may be difficult, but later on, with time, it really does become more clear. And I trust the process because I've been through it a number of times.
All right. So what is your advice? How do you get in contact with those people? And naturally, when you are approaching experts, they're likely to be very, very busy because they're sought after personalities. So how do you get in touch with them?
Well, this is I would say it's an art, you could say, getting the attention of people and making sure that you're not trying to demand too much of them. And the first thing is do your research first by yourself, right? Because if somebody is an expert or is popular or something, then they're going to get lots and lots of questions all the time, and then you're just going to get filtered through all of the people that contact them if you're asking a question that is asked all the time. So the first thing is do your research and make sure you have an overview of the topic. There's so much information available on the internet, or in books or whatever. So just do your research. That's the number one thing. But number two, if you are contacting someone, then you don't want to be sort of demanding, asking for you. First, you might just send the person a message and say, hey, I'm a big fan of your stuff. I just wanted to say thank you for all the great stuff you put out there, etc., etc. And if you get a response from them, then you have the opportunity to say, hey, I have one question or I have two questions for you. And this person is probably then going to respond to you. So that's one way that you can do it. But really getting in touch with people and making sure that they and getting the information you want is a bit of an art. But you said that people can be very busy, but also, if you don't ask, you never know. And so I say that just because somebody is very busy or popular, if you phrase your message in the right way, you will get a response, maybe not straight away. And if you don't get a response straight away, a no doesn't mean no forever. It means maybe just not for now, Right. And the last thing I will say is that online communities, you don't have to go directly to an expert, like I said before. You can go to people that are just ahead of you. And no matter what it is you want to learn, there are online communities out there with just so much knowledge available. So there are forums, for example. If you take the time again and do your research and go through a photography forum, a language forum, a forum for programmers or videographers, you'll find so much knowledge, and you can make friends with people that are on the same level as you in terms of knowledge or just a little bit ahead. And it's easy when it's like that, I think.
All right, okay. I have two more questions before we end the interview. The next one is, what do you also follow a different or specific framework when you are trying to improve already existing skills or already existing knowledge? And if yes, is it different from the other framework that you just explained to us when you were starting from scratch?
Well, in the beginning, I think that it's more about, just trying to get in there, get in there and just learn, because you're going to be continuously learning new things. And so in the beginning, I think it's possible to learn at a faster rate, but when you get to the more intermediate to advanced stages, then I think that number one, the output, the amount of work that you're doing is very important, but then feedback becomes even more important, I think, and surrounding yourself with people who are thinking about the topic area, the subject matter in similar ways, and who can give you critical feedback, and so with languages, this could be speaking with language learners who are more advanced than you, or native speakers, and constantly getting that feedback about what you need to be focused on and what you're not doing so well. And I think that is really what it is it's I like to think of it as a feedback loop. You do something, you get some feedback, and then you go back and then you do some more, and you just keep on going through this circle. And because when you are more advanced, it's not that there are lots of new things to learn necessarily, but it just takes a longer time to see progress. And I think then you are a lot more independent. You can be more independent, but then feedback is even more critical, but then also developing your critical eye for what needs to be focused on. You have to be very attentive. Does that make sense? Is that too vague, or is it
No,
specific enough?
it's definitely totally makes sense. All right, okay. The very last question before we end that interview, that tremendous interview, is, I mean, self-directed learning obviously works for you because you seem to be disciplined, you seem to be motivated, and but it probably won't work for many people, or maybe most of the people, because most of the people, they are, even though they are in the schooling system and they are kind of pressurized to learn and they have deadlines. How do you learn something if you don't have any deadlines, if you don't have any pressure from outside? So can you give one to three very specific strategies or hacks how you keep continue improving yourself, how you keep continue learning by yourself, without
Okay.
relying on outside pressure, for instance?
Okay, well, the first thing I'll say is this, self-education is a myth, right? And why do I say that it's a myth? Because I don't believe that anyone learns anything on their own, right? I don't like when I started my big self-education project, I was thinking about this differently, but I've come to realize that what we really should be referring to is self-directed learning, as you use the term a lot of the time, and this doesn't mean that you do everything on your own. Anyone who does everything on their own will soon realize that it's very, very, very difficult, right? But self-directed learning is sort of pointing yourself in the direction of what it is you want to learn and taking control of the process. And this is different from, academic education, where it's sort of imposed on you that you need to do this, you need to do this, and this is what you are going to learn. Of course, you need to also be self-directed there as well. And so, number one is making sure that you have a few people, maybe one, maybe two people that you can talk to about the topic, that you can lean on for moral support, And so even if you're not, you don't have somebody nearby with, it's easy to make friends online nowadays, where you can work with each other. I've set up study groups in the past, on using Facebook groups, for example, where people with passion can sort of come together and share their ideas. Because we're social beings, If we spend a lot of time alone, it becomes depressing, doesn't it? Too much time alone. And so I always share my learning with other people. If it's not another student, then I'm connecting with people who are acting as mentors to me. And so my advice to people is to not try to do everything on your own, but to direct yourself and take control of the process by making sure that you're bringing other people on board to be part of the journey, which I think is essential. Number one, for saving time, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? A lot of things have already been discovered, and we just need to find out where the knowledge is in the world and put it into our brains. So, tap into the knowledge that exists in the world, and learning with people is fantastic. A lot of the concern people have about self-directed learning, self-education, is that, oh, I can't do this by myself, but it's a myth that you do things by yourself. Not at all.
Amazing. Thank you so much. To wrap this up, so in today's episode, we learned three very important things. So the first thing is the kind of framework. When you're trying to learn something from scratch, you have no experience of. It's really important to do your research first, trying to identify the people who are seen or who are considered to be the experts, and and then reach out for them, right? What I personally do, requesting for interviews or asking a question, I keep my emails very shortly. I thank them for the contributions they've done already, and that's really important. At the end of the interview, you are giving them an exit strategy. You're not assuming that they will have time. You're just saying that I know that you're extremely busy. If you cannot make it, I totally understand, but maybe another time in the future, right? And so because that is based, I think, in on reverse psychology, your request doesn't come across as harsh, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and giving them the exit strategy, interestingly, if results in more positive answers in your request. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and the second thing that we learned from David today is that if you want to build upon already existing skills or existing knowledge, it's really important to implement kind of a feedback loop, right? And harnessing people together who can support yourself, right, in your learning endeavor. And that's really important in terms of motivation, which brings us to the third part of the interview that we learned today, is that it's really important, even if you're learning by yourself, you cannot do anything or everything by yourself. It's really important to connect with people offline and online, to have people who hold you accountable in your learning pursuits. All right, I think
Absolutely.
that wraps up today's session. David, if people want to learn more about you and your projects, where shall they go?
Okay, well, there are two places. davidmansary.com, which is where I sort of write about my ideas on the philosophy of learning and sort of share my progress with my different projects. And that's where you can go to find out things about that. And also languageisculture.com. If you're interested in learning a language, at any level, come over to there, and we provide with information about language learning strategies, about culture, and we also give away free language learning lessons as well. So come over there, and I'm also available on Twitter, Facebook. I'm always rambling about my thoughts on different topics. So you can also join me there, and everywhere it's just David Mansary. You can find me there.
Okay, awesome. If you guys liked that episode, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel as usual, or visit us at howtobecomeaprofessor.com. And lastly, please share with us your experiences. Do you learn better inside the formal education system with pressure from outside, or do you learn better by yourself in terms of self-directed learning? Yeah, we really like to hear and read your thoughts. All right, thank you so much, and talk to you soon. Thank you, David, for being on the show.
Thank you. Ciao.